The inspiration for this outfit came from an old magazine image from around 1900. That was 2 years ago, and I even bought the fabric for the skirt back then. Luckily, that meant I could finally get started right away without thinking about where to get the fabric. A friend and I had already drafted the pattern back then, but after 2 years I had no memory of my original idea or the source of the pattern. I only knew it was based on an antique magazine pattern. Even worse, I felt like something was off. The mock-up helped solve this mystery, after I had mistakenly swapped the front and back pieces. Another reminder to always label pattern pieces, or even better to not make mistakes when you label them like I did here. Once these obstacles were out of the way, I cut the skirt, which consists of 5 panels, 1 for the front, 2 for the side and 2 for the back. Since the outer fabric is poplin and a bit too lightweight, I also cut a satin lining to give it a heavier drape. I love the combination of dark and light green, and I'm already thinking of other ways to incorporate it into future projects. For the skirt though, I wanted to keep it simple, partly because I need a basic skirt in my wardrobe, partly because it fits the outfit, and partly because my projects tend to spiral out of control. So I wanted to stay focused this time. I basted the upper fabric and the lining together. In the past I often used the yarn in a contrasting color so that I can easily distinguish between the actual threads I sewed the garment with and those I have to remove later on. But I found that these threads somehow reappear over time and I have to constantly trim them away wherever I apparently forgot one. I think with a yarn that is less visible, it might bother me less if I don't catch every single thread. The last step before sewing was the marking of the darts, which I also did with the thread marking the points. Then I immediately pinned the darts into place. Once everything was prepared, I sewed the main seams by machine. Luckily, my antique machine works properly again. I have no idea what problem was previously, but I take it. Sometimes an outfit ends up with a name. Not just a description, but a real human name. For me, that name is Mary, or more precisely Mary Green. The name stuck in my mind and now I can't let it go, so it stays. Then I trimmed the seam allowances of the lining and finished them all by hand. I enjoy hand sewing, but it takes forever. There were 5 seams finished on both sides and it took 12 hours in total. Maybe I'm just incredibly slow, but this is definitely not a one-day skirt. Still, I love the way it looks. Maybe someday I'll try a faster finishing method, like sewing a tape over the raw edges, but not today. I finally finished all the seam allowance, so they are now neat and almost tidy. I still have to cut all the threads, but that gave me enough time to think about how to do the waistband, because I wanted to reinforce it, since the waistbands I made so far became a little bit wrinkly. I thought about adding this twill tape like it is described in an old book from 1909, which I have about sewing, household sewing basically, and they just say The tape that was sewn in remains inside. There's never mentioned how it is sewn in, so that's what I have to figure out. But I think what I'm going to do is sew the tape to one side of the main fabric, fold it over, and then hand sew the lining against that. So it won't be visible on neither side, but the tape is sewn in properly. Then I attach the lining to the waistband with a felling stitch again. I chose a center back opening to keep the hips around the sides smooth. The excess fabric in the back was gathered next to the closure. Then I attached the lower part of the lining with a basting stitch to the lining of the skirt, enclosing the seam allowance inside the waistband. At this point I started wondering if the cut was even right for the period I had in mind. The outfit is supposed to be from the early 90s, but the skirt looks more like the 1890s. Luckily I found patterns from later magazines that matched the silhouette I wanted, and the main difference between those patterns from the one I sewed is that they are made of 3 pattern pieces instead of 5. And the other bigger difference is the underskirt. Around 1895 the volume of the skirt is mostly at the back, and in the 1900s is more of a tulip shape where the skirt flares out at the bottom to all sides, still with a little bit more volume to the back. So that means I will have to make an underskirt. This whole thinking process took me 1 week until I finally went on to make the hem. I reinforced it with an approximately 10 cm wide strip of gabardine. This way I'm substituting the much more difficult to get brush braid. My past disaster with a horsehair inlay made me avoid using it this time, and the gabardine's collar matched perfectly. I stitched it to the bottom by machine and pressed it slightly outward so that when the skirt touches the ground, it hits this strip first, making it easy to replace if necessary. The upper edge was secured to the lining with a felling stitch to keep it invisible from the outside. If you watch closely, you will have realized that this skirt doesn't have pockets, which is really inconvenient. At the time this was actually common to maintain a smooth silhouette over the hips. There were historical solutions like hidden slit pockets at the back, which I find really inconvenient, or pockets sewn into the underskirt's ruffles, which I find really fascinating. I don't know how practical it actually is, but I will give that a try soon. Alternatively, a small handbag could work, but these are decisions for the next step. This skirt isn't particularly special, it's actually quite simple to make, unless you insist on hand finishing every seam. Still, I think it looks really elegant. The shape isn't quite right yet, but the right underskirt will fix that. Whether Mary Green will ever be fully finished or end up with the unfinished outfits remains to be seen, but that's a story for another video.